What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Dauntless Dads podcast. Super excited about the question that we're going to be answering this week from one of the men in the Brotherhood. Again, because, gosh dang it, so many men struggle with this, myself included, especially in the past season of life, which I'll probably get into a little bit as we jump in here. But let's just jump right into the question and get rocking and rolling because, well, you'll see. So here's the question. I'm struggling to make time for everything and everyone. Oh, this is going to be good. Juggling my responsibilities, relationships, business, the house, and myself. It's great to have a routine and keep consistency and momentum, but when you get punched in the face, what do? How can I prioritize it all? Oh, man. I feel this question deeply. I run a business, I do consulting, and currently I also have a 40-hour-a-week job as well. And on top of that, right? I have 6 kids, I have a marriage, I have my own health, mental, physical, spiritual. I have relationships, I have all kinds of things. So when somebody asks how to make time for everything and everyone, and then lists all this stuff, I'm like, bro. I feel this. I feel this deeply. This is something that I by no means feel like I have mastered at all. But obviously, with the different things that I face, I feel like I have a decent bit of insight into this. Because one of the things that I feel like, especially with this, I get to just kind of qualify some of the answers I'm about to give here. I really do feel like extremity breeds capacity. And what I mean by that is when you have somebody that has been in extreme circumstances, what it does, extremity builds a capacity for something. So I think one of the illustrations or examples that come to my head is if you want to get really good, right? Like at being a tactical warrior, for example, right? Like you got your AR-15 and you got your sidearm and you're all kitted up and everything, right? Like you want to learn how to just knock targets and take rooms and all this stuff. There's 2 ways you can go about it to get really good. One, you can set up your own course. You can go practice. You can go at the range, all this stuff. But then you have dudes that have been in the military and special forces and they're operators. Right? They've been operators for years and they have been in super extreme circumstances where they're literally across seas, downrange, going after a target, and they're going into rooms that where bullets are flying back at you, right? High stakes, high reward. That level of extremity breeds a different level of capacity than, the guy who just wants to get really good at it as kind of a defense thing or a hobby. Extremity breeds capacity. And in this regard in particular, I feel like I have lived at a very extreme for a while, right? First of all, 6 kids, right? Married 15 years. I would say the past 12, 13 years, I've always had some business or multiple businesses going while having another job, this, that, the other thing, friendships, relationships, community, health, fitness, all this stuff. So I feel like I've got some experience in this on how to juggle these things. And first and foremost, I want to go after the end of this question real quick as just kind of a baseline. Like, how can I prioritize it all? The answer to that is you can't. You can't balance it all. Because here's the thing with balance, right? Because a lot of people, when they talk about this stuff, like how do I prioritize it? How do I balance? How do I get balance? All this stuff. Here's the thing with balance is in order to live a quote balanced life, what that would mean, because even if we took one of those old school scales and put stuff on it, right? Essentially what we're doing is we're trying to place things on each side, and in order to get balance means that both things or both sides have to have equal weight. And we can also interpret equal weight as equal value. And the reason why I don't believe that balance is really a real thing in life is because not all things have equal weight or equal value. For example, it's like, how can I balance my marriage and my relationships with my friends. Well, I'm not going to balance those things because they don't have equal weight and value. While my friends and relationships that I have are extremely valuable, my relationship with my wife is of extremely more value and weight. So I will, on purpose, in certain seasons, prioritize my relationship with my wife. If I'm going to have to make a sacrifice in one of these two areas, I'm going to sacrifice some of the other relationships in my life because they don't hold equal value and weight. While they are both extremely important, and any of my friends that are listening to this is not a kick in the face to you. I love you. You know I love you. But obviously, I will always prioritize my wife, my date nights, my relationship with her, because it's of extremely more weight and value. And so the idea of balance, the first flaw in all of it is assuming everything is of equal weight and value, which it's not. And so I actually really like how this individual asked this question at the very end here. He says, how can I prioritize it all? Not how can I balance it all? And I know this person that asked this, and they're very smart. And they're very careful with their words. And that's why they probably chose this word, because this person knows that balance is an absolute myth, and it has to do with prioritization. So how can you prioritize it all, or how can you balance it all? You can't. So don't try and balance it all. It's not supposed to be balanced because not everything has equal weight and value. And second, just as a foundation and baseline for answering this, you need to understand that if everything is important, then nothing is. And this is a principle that I learned in leadership and in marketing, where if we're like in marketing, when I used to be a marketing director for a church, it was a big church. There was always lots going on. And if we made every single event for every single ministry and every single thing going on, if we made it all the equal weight and value, what we're telling everybody is all of this stuff has equal weight and value, just kind of whatever. And so, because if everything's important, then nothing is. Nothing has more weight or more value than anything else. So what we would do in the marketing world is we would strategically give certain things much bigger platforms, more face time, more posts, more calls to action than other things, because it made a clear delineation between what was important and what was not as important. Doesn't mean it's not important, just not as important. Same thing goes in life. Everything is valuable, but there are varying degrees of that weight and value and importance. And we have to be honest with ourselves about that, because if you're starting from the place where you're just putting equal weight and value across the board for everything, you're going to lose. You're going to lose because while you can do anything, you cannot do everything. Okay, I'm going to say that again because it's super important to understand. You can do anything, but you cannot do everything. As a human being, you do not have the physical, emotional, and spiritual capacity to do everything and meet everyone's demands, meet everybody's asks and requests. You can't do it. Jesus couldn't do it. I've never met a person that could do it. You can do anything. You really can, because you have the presence of God. You have the Spirit of God living inside of you. So you can do anything. But you cannot do everything. And if you try and live your life that way, doing everything for everyone, being all things to all people at all times, you will end up sick, tired, burnt out, and ultimately failing at doing anything for anyone. So, if everything's important, nothing is. Now, let's kind of dive into this a little bit. First of all, how do we prioritize this? Well, the first thing we have to think about is priorities have to shift with seasons. Priorities have to shift with seasons. If you carry the priorities of a previous season into a new season, what you will get is overwhelm. Because the previous season that you may have been in, there were certain priorities. And now that you're in a new season, you can't carry those same priorities over, because this new season has different demands. And if you carry the demands and priorities of a previous season into the next, what happens is you get a stacking of priorities. And then you just get confused and overwhelmed because you're like, well, now what do I do? I didn't just add more on my plate. I have multiple plates now. And you go season to season to season and season. And you're like, I have 6 plates that are all full. I'm trying to juggle them, but I got 2 hands. How do I do this? You can't carry the same priorities in each season. And think about it this way. This is the way I first learned it, is a farmer has very, very distinct seasons in their year. And all of those seasons have very defined priorities. Okay. So first you have spring season. Okay. So you got spring season. That's a preparation season. They're preparing ground. They're getting ready for the summer. They're getting their seeds ready. They're getting their ground ready, all of that. They're planting maybe because it's getting closer to warmer weather and it's not overwhelming work yet, but they're doing it. Summertime, they're working hard. The days are long, the hours are hard, and they do different kinds of work during the summer than they did in the spring. In the fall, it's different than summer. It's still hard. The days are still decently long, but they're harvesting the fruit of their hard work. And in the winter, there's nothing they can really do. It's time to rest. It's time to recoup. It's time to spend more time with family. It's time to enjoy the harvest. Knowing that that time of rest and recuperation is leading you into your next season of spring and so on and so forth. If a farmer lived his life the same way during the winter as he did in the summer, how do you think he would feel? Burnt out, tired, and overwhelmed. Because the summer has different priorities than winter. So the first thing that I would ask an individual that says, I got all this stuff going on, how do I prioritize it all? The first thing I would ask is this. What things are you currently doing or placing value or prioritizing that you shouldn't be? Because you're in a season right now where you're prioritizing some things that were from previous seasons. You're giving the same weight and value to them as a previous season. And it's overwhelming you, not because you don't have the capacity to do what's important, but because you've just brought so many priorities from previous seasons into the current one, you don't know what's up and what's down at this point. So do a little evaluation. What priorities from previous seasons have I brought into my current season? That's super important. Second, you need to define the big rocks in your current season. What are the big rocks? And at the end of the day, and what I wrote down is it's important because you're prioritizing what should be prioritized. Then you fill in the gaps as diligently as possible. Right now, I'm in a season where my schedule is so full right now. I'm so full, practically so full. 40 hours a week at a job, running a business, consulting, family, all this. I got so much going on. And as we headed into the season, we had a meeting with our family and we talked about expectations and the vision and how long this season should last and so on and so forth and what to expect, how we're going to navigate it, all that stuff. The first thing I started to do was I started to put the big rocks in. When I got my schedule at my job and I saw my days off, the first things I put in, date night, my date with my kid that week. Those were the 2 big rocks I put in. And in the midst of my schedule, my gym time is still in there. My food prep time is still in there. All these things are still in there because those are my big rocks. We have to put the big things in that are like, these are the things that have to be prioritized. Now, if the big rock thing, I'm sure some of you have seen that, seen the videos of that. You've heard of that, all of that. There's another illustration that I want to tell you, and it has to do with Dave Ramsey, the, debt-free guy, right? I was watching a video from him one time about talking through the process of getting out of debt. And at some point, you're right, you have to, he calls it draw the line in your finances. And there's basically a line where your money runs out and everything above the line gets paid and everything below the line doesn't get paid. So let's say you got $5,000 a month, right? And you got rent up here. It's like $2,000. You got groceries, however much. You got electricity, water, gas, all these things. The most important things that you just have to have in order to sustain safety, life, transportation, those things. And then you have below the line, and maybe you have a bunch of debt that has a bunch of payments, or there's all kinds of other stuff. And let's say your credit card company calls you and they're like, hey, you missed your payment. When are we getting the payment? And he's like, here's what you tell them. I have so much money to spend every month, and I am taking care of things that I have to take care of. And unfortunately, this month, you have fallen below the line. And what that means is you're not getting paid this month. And I'm not going to go into, we're not going to talk about finances and all of this on this call. Okay. And I've actually gone through this process before as we were paying off debt and we were in like super terrible spot. And that conversation actually went better with the people that I had it with, the company that I had it with than I thought it would. But at some point in your life, when you're trying to prioritize all kinds of things, you have to decide where that line is. You have to figure out where you're drawing that line and what's above the line and what's below the line. I got asked to go do something recently in the midst of my current schedule, and I said no. And it was something I would love to do with people I would love to do it with, but because of my schedule and my priorities, it fell below the line. And it's not because I don't love the people or I didn't want to do what they were doing. It's just that I only have so much hours in a day and in a week, right? Money. And I drew the line and said, no, this falls below the line. I'm not going to do it. And so when it comes to prioritizing things, you have to define your most important things, the things that should be prioritized, the big rocks, because if you don't, then there's no line that you're drawing in your life. So everything is above the line. And therefore it's like, well, now because everything's above the line and everything's a priority, now I have to figure out how to do all this stuff. No, you don't. You get to draw a line somewhere and you get to decide what's above or below it. And walking that out isn't always the easiest thing. You might hurt feelings. You might get emotional about it. People might get miffed. Things that you'd love to get done might not get done. People you'd love to spend time with might not be getting time spent with you. But at some point, you're human. You only have so much energy and capacity. And you have to draw that line somewhere. So real quick, I thought it'd be cool. Well, not cool necessarily, but just valuable for me to share with you my big rocks. What are my big rocks? And this is honestly how I look at this for myself. And you might be surprised at some of these. And they are what they are. These are my big rocks. I don't have to explain them to you, even though I might a little bit. I don't have to explain myself with these. These are my big rocks, and they are in this order on purpose. And they are what they are. Okay? So first of all, my big rocks is my own personal, mental, physical, spiritual well-being. And this is always where I get pushback. Always where I get pushback. Like, oh my God, Cody, what about looking out for the interests of others and, prioritizing other people above yourself? I get it. We just have a different large interpretation of that scripture. But at the end of the day, I am of lesser service to everybody in my life if I show up as 50% of me because I haven't prioritized myself. So I will always prioritize myself. I'll prioritize my gym time, my nutrition, my spiritual life, my everything. I will prioritize myself because when I prioritize myself, then after I'm done prioritizing myself and I've filled myself up and I have set myself up for success, then I can go serve others at the highest level possible that are above the line. That's why that's number one. Second is my marriage. End of story, full stop. And I'll just say third is my children, right? And so if I have to decide between who gets a date that week, my wife or my kids, I'll choose my wife every single time because she, in the order of my big rocks, both biblically and in my life, she is more important than my children. Again, it's not saying that my kids are not important. You've all heard me talk about my kids. I would take a bullet for my kids. Man, my kids I love my children so fiercely. But if it comes between choosing between them or my wife, I'm going to choose my wife. Now, granted, listen, you're like, because I can just hear people in my head. Well, like, what if there's like someone came with a gun and they're like, who's going to die first? Are you going to choose yourself, your wife, or your kids? Dude, shut up. Come on. That's a ridiculous scenario. And of course, I would say, hey, I'm the one taking the bullet, right? So let's not get this confused. Let's keep it in context of what we're talking about here, okay? Let's not start to create scenarios and exceptional exceptions to try and prove this different, right? This, like I said, this is my own personal list of big rocks. My own mental, physical, spiritual well-being, my marriage, my children. After that is providing for all of that stuff above, right? Being the provider of my home for all those areas. And then my other relationships in my life, right? And this is why in certain seasons of my life, like right now, I just text a friend who, I probably haven't seen it's my best friend, Nick. I haven't seen him in probably a week. Right. And this is way different than when like the past year and a half, really. Cause I used to see the guy every freaking day. And it's just the season I'm in right now. These other relationships, this is where they fall. But I just got done texting him. I was like, hey man, I'm off tomorrow. What time are you going to the gym? He's like, I'm gonna be here. Cool. You want to work out together and crush this workout together? I haven't seen you. He's like, absolutely, bro. Let's do it. Let's catch up. Sweet. Doesn't mean I'm not going to reach out to my friends. Now, that certainly doesn't mean I'm going to reach out to all my friends. I mean, because I have a lot of local friends here. So even there, I have a hierarchy of people I reach out to. So those are my own personal big rocks. My own mental, physical, spiritual well-being, my marriage, children, provision, and relationships. You have to decide what those are for you. If you don't know what those are, if they aren't as clear as I can put it down right here, like I just did, if you don't have them as clear as that, then you have some work to do. Now, even with the question of this individual, like things around the house, their business, all these things, you have to figure out where all of these things are in play. And I'll take it a step further with how I do this. So, for example, I am on day 1 of 2 days off in a row right now. Okay. I have date night put in. That's in tonight. I have my date with one of my kids tomorrow. The other time in my day is allocated to the things, the other pieces of what is most important to me. So in the morning, I have my gym time. Like I'm going to lift with Nick tomorrow. That takes care of a lot of my mental, physical well-being. I have my devotional time. I have my worship time throughout the day. Cool. Well, I had date night I have date night tonight. Boom, there's my marriage. I have date night with my kid tomorrow. Children. I'm actually going to Elijah's first ever basketball practice tomorrow. Children investment. But then in these other places, I've placed relationships and providing it, right? So I reached out to a friend. Hey, you want to work out? Boom, there's some relationship time. I have another call with a friend that I put on the calendar because it's important. And if it's not on your calendar, it's not going to happen. So it's on the calendar. And provision. I have business tasks that I'm doing, and part of the business tasks for the next 2 days, or at least today, I had a block of about 2.5 hours to record 4 podcasts. And that's why I'm sitting here right now, because this was blocked. Because part of the business, part of Dauntless Dads, part of growing the movement, part of growing the membership and serving and investing in men is sitting down and doing these podcasts. Something that the past 2 weeks, when my schedule got flipped upside down, I didn't prioritize well. So I had to sit down and reevaluate, okay, what are my big rocks? Where are they at? Where are they at in my calendar? All of these things. These things require constant upkeep. And I would also say, I thought I put it in the notes, but I didn't see it in here, so I want to mention it. You can tell me your priorities, but if you show me your calendar and they don't reflect your priorities, stop calling them priorities. Half the time when I talk to people about how do I prioritize things, how do I balance things, how do I do everything, I say, cool, open your calendar real quick, give me your phone, open your calendar, show me what you got on there. And it's a bunch of blank space. And so what they're doing at that point is they're running around and everything is important. Everything is a fire. Everything needs to be done now. There's no system. There's no strategy. There's no clarity. So the way that you prioritize things, you have to go through all of what we just talked about. And at the end of the day, what's making it onto your calendar? You show me your calendar and you show me your bank statements, and I'll tell you what's a priority to you. And if your calendar is empty, then what I would say is nothing's a priority to you because it's not blocked out. It's not blocked out. Time, we don't get time back. You know, when people say time is money, I don't believe time is money. I believe time is infinitely more valuable than money. And so if you're not being clear with how you're going to use your time, you are being irresponsible with one of the most precious resources that God has given you. So we have to learn how to prioritize these things. We have to learn how to get the big rocks on our calendar strategically and in a way and in a fashion where we accomplish what God's calling us to do. Because if we don't, we're just going to keep running around complaining that everything is so hard and we can't prioritize it. All right? Love you guys. Talk to you next week.